Welcome to the third community roundtable. It's exciting to be here once again. We are joined by several team members, some of which you've seen before. Actually, pretty much everyone here has done a roundtable before. I think is that right? We got Tom Widget from the who now is working on the Lokinet team. We've got Ryan who's working on the Messenger team at the moment. Key, the tech lead. Josh, marketing lead. We've got Johnathan who's been also known as Jimmy, who's been working on the stream, who's sitting in the chat there. Might actually have a question for you in a minute. In a minute, actually, from the chat. Jason from the core team and the Loki Foundation, Chris McCabe, operations lead. So, without further ado, we'll kick things off. We'll answer a question that was asked in the other chat by Necro Nemesis, who I know is floating around in the stream. Is someone concurrently creating user documentation for Loki apps? This is very much something that is up your street, Mr. Johnathan. So why don't you tell us about how we create documentation and what currently exists for that and where they
Yep.
can find more.
Awesome. I don't know if the stream can actually hear me. I had to quickly add an audio input capture to the streaming, but they should be able to because it's showing it's working.
Just sorting out Jonathan's audio.
Yeah, so I'm hired full time to do documentation and research. There we go. Yeah, I'm hired full time to do documentation and research. So every time we have a new release, I spend time rejigging our guides and making it easy for the users to be able to use our products.
So if you want to see what documentation we currently have available, we've sort of collated everything into a nice little website called lokidocs.com. And that's where all of our user guides currently are. If there are major holes in our user docs and you'd like more explanation about how any particular product works or anything like that, that's really useful information. So if you wouldn't mind sharing with us what you're looking for, and if there are major holes, we can do up that documentation so we can get that created so the community is aware about how everything works. That's super important. So yeah, hope that answers your question. We had a lot of questions come through Menti. We're going to start answering them now. So I have some questions for Ryan, actually. Um, Ryan's currently working on the Messenger team. At the moment, you're working on some pretty big group chats so we can migrate our Telegram community into Loki Messenger itself, which is a really exciting development. Um, so I got a question for you, Ryan. With the release of the Messenger, will there be a feature to add people through their phone number rather than a key? If so, when will that be implemented?
So that's actually a feature that's been requested quite a bit. We're still kind of debating that internally because as a privacy messenger, like personally, and one of the reasons I haven't used many privacy messengers was because I was asking for my phone number. So I felt that was very antithetical. But we do understand there is some user requests for that, people that do want it easy. But if we implement it, it would probably have to be an opt-in, and then that would degrade the question of how users are discovered. Does that make it a lot harder? So there's still some internal debate and questions about that.
Yeah, I'm very anti phone number. Phone numbers are a government issued identification number that can be very easily tracked. There are public websites you can go onto and basically find out where most people's cell phones are, roughly speaking, just by looking their number up. It's pretty crazy and definitely not a feature that I think we'll be implementing personally. We are trying to make it easier to add your friends, family, and contacts through Loki Messenger by implementing the Loki name system. So instead of having a key, you can have a very simple human readable name, much the same as a Telegram username, for example, by using a transaction on the Loki blockchain that you can register through the app itself. So instead of me being, a very long hexadecimal string, I will be Simon.Loki. I dibs that name. If anyone buys that name, I'll be very upset. Please don't buy it. I dibs it. Don't buy it. I've got to make that clear. You can't buy that name. That's my name. All right. So yeah, that's kind of what we're doing to make that happen. So instead of people having to exchange these really complicated keys around, they can either use QR codes on their phone, which is a feature that we have on our feature list that we're going to be developing very soon, or they will have simple usernames that can be easily shared across the internet. There are some privacy implications with that. It's important that people are able to create accounts that don't require a username, because that username is publicly registered on the blockchain as well. So by registering a username, you immediately call out the fact that a particular pub key is owned by someone, as opposed to just random noise that you might otherwise. You can't guess public keys. There's just far too many of them, is what I'm trying to say, which is a good privacy property. Okay, more questions for you, Ryan. What are the advantages of Loki Messenger over Signal and Wire? Ryan, would you like to fill that one?
Sure. So the main advantage is our distributed service node network. Right now, Signal and Wire are pretty centralized as far as their servers go, and we pretty much outsource that trust to the community as the service node operators. And we built this system where it can require very little trust, and we hope that model gives us an advantage over Signal or Wire.
The simple advantages are there's no central repository of conversation graphs that can be derived from who is talking to who. So while we still use the same end-to-end encryption and there's no additional security that's derived from that, it's actually not possible unless you control the vast majority of the Loki network to know who is talking to who at any given time. And even then through peer-to-peer connections and so forth, and a paper that Key's writing, that's going to be actually even harder to find out. Maybe we'll talk about mixed mode in a minute if you like, Key. The main advantages, as I see it, doesn't ever ask you for a phone number, which is a huge plus for privacy. Completely decentralized storage and distribution system. It masks your IP address throughout the process through Lokinet. And there's sort of three really major features that go far beyond and above what Signal and Wire do. I think Signal is oversold as a private messenger. It's a very secure messenger, but that does not mean privacy by any stretch of the imagination, and people should be very wary about that. So we'll move on. I have a question here. I understand the Messenger app is available on Android. Is there any timeline for Apple devices? Well, I hate to break it to you, but iOS came out before Android. So if you do have an iOS device, you can currently go on test flight and get Loki Messenger on iOS. And that's actually working really well, the iOS one. So go ahead and do that. It'll be good fun. If you want to get my public key for Messenger and have a chat with me personally, I'm always happy to field questions on Loki Messenger. You go to my Twitter, Simon A. Harmon, and I've got my pub key up the top there. Actually, I think I need to update that real quick because I switched from my desktop to my mobile as my primary one. So just hold that thought. After this stream, I'll do that. But yeah, it's a good one. And by the way, follow me on Twitter. I'm trying to up my Twitter game this month, so it'd be really helpful. Let's move on. I got a question for Jason actually about Blink. Can you give us a little update on how that's going?
So it's coming along, but part of the Blink development, as I kind of got into this, I said, okay, well, what do we need to have in place in Loki? What I realized is the thing that one of the problems that we have at the moment, and it's not too much of a problem, but it's becoming more of one, is the amount of traffic that's going over our peer-to-peer network. And some of that traffic is service nodes sending uptime proofs, but also a lot of it is sending votes, for example, for upcoming checkpoints. We have the checkpoint votes actually out there. They're not enforced yet. And sending like deregistration and decommission votes across the network. So there's all these messages flying around on the network. And Blink would add more to that if we tried to put it onto that same network. So the first thing that I've been working on so far is I don't have an exact name for it. I'm tentatively calling it QuorumNet. But this is a way for service nodes to communicate directly to each other. So service nodes in a quorum, certain ones will establish connections to each other and they'll pass all their messages directly between each other rather than flooding them across the network. So this was kind of one of the things that Blink really needs to have in place so that we can actually have these Blink messages, first, not flood the network, and second, go out much faster because they're going more or less directly to between service nodes rather than having to go across the peer-to-peer network, which is all the, not just the quorum that matters, but all the service nodes across the network. So my time so far has been focused on building up this quorum net, which is going to have these other spillover effects of getting a lot of that traffic off of the peer-to-peer network and getting it just in terms of service nodes talking to each other. Once that's implemented, then I can actually start with the cryptography side of it in terms of making, actually implementing the way that Blink needs to work in terms of, well, in terms of everything in the 20-something page white paper. So it's coming along, but at the moment it's building the pieces that are needed to build the other pieces on top.
Awesome. Yeah, it's exciting progress. While we're here, I noticed that the chat has gone a little bit quiet. I know a lot of questions were asked in the old stream link, but if you really want your question answered, because there are 2 pages worth of questions here and a very limited amount of time to answer them. So if you do want your questions definitely answered, post your question again in the chat. Let's get the chat going, guys. Come on. All right, I got some interesting questions around where we're headed now that we've put out the hefty Heimdall hard fork. And there was a question before in the chat, actually, while we're talking about hard forks, about how we name our hard forks. Hefty Heimdall was my suggestion. Very rarely my suggestions actually get put through. I was very happy. Key, why don't you tell us about how we come up with these retarded names?
Yeah, we've had a few naming ideas. The first one, I think, I don't know if it was the first. I think the first one we actually just decided inside of the team without doing much of a vote. The second one, I think there was actually a challenge during the Christmas. It was one of the Christmas challenges to name the next release. We named it Festive Freya, and that was from the community. The next release, I expect we'll probably do another vote in the office. We haven't really got a release name yet. Actually, that's a good idea. We should do a vote today probably on what the release name should be called, because we have a release coming up, in the next couple of months for checkpointing. The one that we said was going to happen on our release timeline about a month ago when we announced the Hefty Heimdall release. We also announced the date for the activation of checkpointing, which will be another hard fork, which will include a couple of other things. But yeah, we've got to come up with a name for that one too.
The naming convention so far has been some descriptive word, not necessarily an adjective, but some sort of descriptive word, and then the name of a Norse god that both start with the same letter. So we've had occasional Odin, magic Mani, festive Freya, and summer Sigyn, which is the exception to the rule because summer is a noun and not an adjective. I was very displeased at that one. But and then hefty Heimdall. So I don't know. We'll pick a god that we think is kind of relevant to the next release. I'm thinking something to do with order because it's checkpointing for September, and then pick a description from there. So if you've got ideas for that, post them in the chat. Maybe, who knows? Maybe you'll actually get to name the release right here, right now. Anyway, so what is shaping up to be the major focus of the next fork? So we're activating checkpointing. What else is going into that release, and then what happens after that?
Is that to everyone or to me?
It's to you, Key.
Yeah, so the major thing is checkpointing, obviously. It's live right now. I might drop a link in the chat. You can actually see the checkpoints occurring on mainnet right now on Loki blocks. The main thing is they're happening, but they're not actually being enforced. So if there was to be a chain that came along that was longer than the reorganization limit for checkpoints, which is about 12 blocks, or it's not 12 blocks actually, it's two consecutive checkpoints. But if there was to be a longer chain to come along, the blockchain would just accept the longest proof of work chain. So don't know the exact date that we're enabling the hard fork. I think it's on the board somewhere. I'll try and get it out in the community. But on that date, we'll actually start enforcing the checkpointing rules. I think there's quite a few smaller changes, like Jason's changes that he's talking about now with the P2P like network and the service nodes being able to talk directly to each other. That's probably going to go in the same release. But yeah, it's mainly for checkpointing at this point. There's a lot of other things coming in the future as well, which will be in another release. But yeah, that's the main focus.
Awesome. So many questions here. It's quite full on. We had Dan McGuinness come in and repost his question from the other chat, so I will answer it. Privacy coins are under regulatory scrutiny, particularly in the US, UK, and Australia. Where do you see this going, and what is your plan to be compliant with the slowly evolving global crypto regulations? So we've posted a few different responses to this sort of question. I don't know that privacy coins are specifically under regulatory scrutiny. I think cryptocurrency more generally is under regulatory scrutiny from financial regulators, pretty much across the board, everywhere on the planet. There are, we've done what we can with our legal team to ensure that we have a good, strong regulatory framework to deal with that. As far as privacy coins, I have not heard any specific regulation regarding privacy coins of any kind in any of those three jurisdictions. But there is some concern around what the Five Eyes Alliance has been doing recently in terms of creating legislation that allows them to ask software and internet provider companies to modify their systems in order to allow them to have certain capabilities against particular individuals that use their products. And that's something that we posted a lengthy response to when it came out in Australia, called the Assistance and Access Bill. We don't believe it's going to have any impact on our operations whatsoever. But we are constantly monitoring the situation in terms of regulation, legislation. It's a big part of what I do personally, but the whole team is constantly on alert for anything that might come up. But as far as we're aware, here in Australia, we have very little to be concerned about at the moment. So far, the government has been quite supportive in what ways it can be of what we're trying to do here. We achieved charity status with the ACNC, and there's been a few governmental organizations that have helped us attend consensus and things like that by supporting us to be there. So I think the notion of regulation is far too over discussed, as particularly amongst the US. But being outside of the US is a very nice thing, because the US regulators have much more resources to be able to investigate and legislate on these sorts of things than Australia might or the UK might. We're much smaller nations. We don't have nearly as big a regulatory framework, which is both a good and bad thing, because the US can be a little bit more nuanced about the way it decides to regulate any given thing, whereas in the UK and Australia it can often be quite broad brush, which is either good or bad depending on how you view it. So at the moment we're not concerned about any particular legislation. I hope that answers your question. All right, Tom and Jason, as the current Lokinet representatives here, we'll talk a little bit about Lokinet. What progress has been on Lokinet since the last update, and what are the next steps to have a usable version for Messenger? Either one, if you can field this.
I guess I'll start on it. Maybe Tom can fill in. So a lot of the development. So just to preface this, I'm involved in the Lokinet team, but only as a sort of coordination role. I'm not actually a developer, so Tom can maybe fill in more on the development details. But our progress has been basically taking the code base, fixing a lot of the issues that are in it, and cleaning a lot of things up. So there's been some major refactoring, and that has been designed to let us figure out where there were some problems in the earlier release that we had that didn't work all that well. And so there's been a lot of fixes, a lot of cleanup in terms of getting that going. Now, in terms of getting that integrated in Messenger release, and in terms of getting another public release out, if you're paying attention to the dev updates, which of course you should be, um, you'll notice that we are saying that we're heading eminently towards a public release. So we're really hoping to get that out this month, by the end of the month. But we're doing a lot of internal testing with it. And we found some bugs. We fixed those bugs, and we're moving forward on it. So our hope is to have a 0.5 release out that works pretty well, that we're confident saying, okay, go test this. And yeah, you'll probably break some things, but that's cool, as you do, bring them back to us. And then once that's out, then Messenger can start putting itself onto Lokinet traffic. But anyway, I'll turn it over to Tom now to talk a little more about the technical side.
Well, I mean, you mostly covered it. Like, it's hard to cover more than broad strokes in a meeting of this context. But in general, yeah, that's basically the gist of it. Is we've been working on doing some refactoring and some just revisiting parts of the code to verify functionality. What's it supposed to be doing? What is it doing? And testing, right? And then fixing bugs as we go, paying down some technical debt as you do. It's looking a lot better than when last we did this roundtable. There's been a lot of progress. We've noticed, a few minor bugs here and there that, while like by themselves, not really that big a deal, but when you get a few bugs working together in concert, then it can cause stability issues, which we, at least I think, we've mostly hammered out the major stability issues that we've dealt with in the past. As for Messenger, for integration with Messenger, on the desktop side of things, that shouldn't require a whole lot more than is currently already done, other than the actual integration, right? There shouldn't be a whole lot more design, as it were. On the mobile side of things, it'll require a bit more doing, as Apple, for example, have a very specific framework with which you can do networky things, and we have to live within that framework in order to make things work. And so, we've got plans in place, and we've got some work in place toward that end. But it is a bit more effort than doing it on, say, just a desktop or a laptop. But yeah, I don't know how much more detail I can really fill in this context, because I could go on forever, but.
I just wanted to add one point to that, which was just to clarify that our upcoming 0.5 release is just desktop platform, so Linux, Mac, and that crappy operating system that lots of people seem to use.
Cool. So in terms of, there's another question here, when will Lokinet be implemented on the mainnet? The answer to that question, I discussed this in an unofficial trading group chat last night, actually, but essentially it all comes down to when we can find a stable release for Lokinet. And the issue with that is that we're often dealing with unknown unknowns. If we know we don't know something, that gives us tools to investigate it more, and we can often find and track down that bug and move with that. But Lokinet is a fairly complicated piece of technology, and a fairly new one at that just hasn't had a lot of time to actually find some of the major issues that sit below the obvious level that is easy to fix. So now that we're approaching this period where we're able to put out a public release, hopefully in a couple of weeks' time after a series of internal testing, it's really going to be actually super critical that as many of you as possible are able to spend an hour of your time downloading the software, installing it, going through the guide, doing some of the test cases, and just literally seeing if it works. And if it doesn't work, pass that information back to us. It's super critical that we get this thing rolled out on a number of machines in all different parts of the world, run by all types of different people, so that we're able to collect that feedback and actually implement it into Lokinet. The sooner we can get that sort of feedback, the more we have to work on and improve it, and the quicker we can improve it, the quicker it comes out with Messenger. So I'd ask you to keep your eyes on the ball for an announcement for a re-release of the Lokinet beta program, and jump on that when you have an opportunity to do so. That'd be really, really helpful. Okay. There's Marcela Sardinia has put a question in that some people have been bringing up over the last few days after we made a subtle announcement in the governance channel a few days ago. The question is, questions in regards to the Loki Foundation's approval on buying more stake in Loki itself. If the foundation did go ahead with that, could you elaborate on it a little bit more? How much will be bought? Will it be purchased via exchange or an allocated wallet set aside for this? So unfortunately, I'm not going to tell you anything we haven't already said, but I can explain why. So for those that are unaware, the Loki Foundation a little while ago approved a motion to purchase more Loki. And that might seem a little bit odd. We already have Loki. Why would we need more? And the very simple answer to that is, as the Loki Foundation is extremely confident in the work that has happened so far and the work that is coming up, we have determined that in order to be able to sustain ourselves in the future, it makes sense for us to invest in our own project. So we set out some terms about how that is going to work, and some limits and some strategies that were put into the resolution, and that moved ahead, and we thought it was important to let the community know that we were doing this. But the reason why we can't say specifically what we're doing is because we can't. If we instruct the community about what our exact strategies are at this time, that has a chance to artificially influence the market against our favor. So it's against our interest to tell you exactly what we're doing, because sellers may front run the market and cause us to purchase Loki at a higher price than might otherwise be desirable. We probably will release a report on the acquisition and how it all went at a later stage, but for the time being, we're not going to release any further details about that purchase. It may happen on market, it may happen off market, I won't say. But it is important that the community knows that it is happening. So I hope that answers your question as much as I'm able to. Some other team/foundation related questions. Can the Loki's current team members be introduced in detail? At present, how many full-time developers and how many marketing personnel are there? So I think, was it the first community roundtable or the second one? I actually got up with my laptop and pointed the camera at my nose accidentally, where I was actually supposed to be pointing it at the people in the office. It's quite funny. Yeah, we did a little tour of the people that work out of the Australian office. I think most of the people on the team have been on a roundtable at this point. But for your information, we currently have 23 team members, I think. I think it's around 23. It changed. We've been growing a little bit recently, so it's hard to keep track of exactly what the numbers are. But at the moment, we have just hired another 3 personnel for the marketing team in the last month or so, which has been a really exciting development. It's going to give the marketing team a lot more resources to, instead of being just purely reactionary and maintaining the community, it's going to allow them to actually be able to expand what they do and try and reach out more to external communities and try and generate new interest into the Loki project. So that's been a really exciting development. Alex, Guy, and Tim are the 3 new members for them. As far as full-time developers go, we have, how many do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 in the office, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 overseas. So I think it's around 13. Must be 13. It's it's around 13. Yeah, am I right?
On the website, anyway, we have a team section, so you can actually check out all the developers and the people on the team. I think pretty much everybody's on there as well.
Yeah. So, and there's a side question to that. Have we had any luck finding more developers? Key, you want to tell us about the current recruitment efforts?
Yeah, we're currently looking for a C++ developer to join the Lokinet team. We have been interviewing for that as well. We're just interviewing someone kind of a junior in Australia right now, but we're also looking for more people. The difficulty with that is that we want someone with strong kind of distributed networking experience or a proven kind of record that they can adapt really quickly to a big project. So yeah, that one's a bit tricky. We're also looking for a Loki core developer as well, maybe someone who's like very junior, just got out of university potentially to work on some of the smaller issues on Loki core. And then we're also thinking about hiring another kind of front end style person to work on issues with Loki Messenger as well. So there's a lot of boats we're looking at right now where we've got ads up on Reddit and I think a couple of US sites as well, Indeed, and not Seek, but there's a couple of other websites that we're Angel List. Yeah, we're advertising on Angel List too. So if you have any interest in working at Loki and you were interested in what I just talked about in any of those three roles, you can email team@loki.network, and that will come to either me or Simon's inbox eventually. Yeah, so cool.
Yeah, until maybe a month ago, we kind of paused development hiring. We were kind of reaching the point, a comfortable point in our budget where we didn't want to push it any further than was necessary. But since then, we've realized that we could really use some more hands in particular areas. So as that happens, we continue to hire more. Hiring has been wouldn't say it's been a real challenge for us, but we are very picky. And I think that's been an absolute asset to the organization. It takes a while to find good people, but once we find them, they deliver some really fantastic results. So I'm not too concerned about that. All right. Let's talk about exchanges very quickly. Maybe Chris can give us a little update about how that's generally going. But I have some questions here. Thoughts on implementing Loki Bridge on other DEX platforms like EOS's new DEX? Hell no. I don't like EOS very much. I'll just say that. Does Loki have plans to go on big exchanges like Fabi and Binance at the end of the year? Yeah, I think just the general question is what's going on in exchange land at the moment. And I think, yeah, are you happy to field that, Chris?
Yeah, I'll add some notes, I guess. We're always speaking with exchanges that we sort of like and I guess respect, and the community also puts forward to us. We're not putting all our, I guess we're on DEX at the moment, we're on the Binance DEX, and we see that as maybe a stepping stone for main Binance. But we're not putting all our eggs into that at this time, and we're not. But going back to EOS, I was pretty much going to say the same thing as Simon said. I'm not a huge fan of yeah, creating more bridges is just kind of more trust that we have to give to somebody else. So yeah, with exchanges, we're chatting to a few, but I can't really lock in that we're going to be on any major ones this year. We're going to have to wait and see, and we're just going to have to keep progressing in the right direction.
I think a comment I might add is that it is ultimately not up to us to decide where we are listed. When we do get offers, we do weigh them up. Some of them ask for what we consider to be a large amount of money that we can spend in better ways. We don't believe that exchange listings fundamentally change anything about the Loki market. They just create a temporary upwards pressure, and then from there, it's essentially just creating more order books that have to be maintained. So we're not super keen on listing on a bunch of exchanges. It doesn't make any fundamental sense at all. There are, of course, major ones that we are interested in. But due to confidentiality agreements, we can't really talk too much about any specific exchange. We don't want to muddy the waters or damage our chances with any particular exchange. So we won't be saying much more than that ever. So don't expect it.
We're also very happy with KuCoin. I really like using KuCoin. I think a lot of people in the community appreciate KuCoin, and it is rated without, I guess, if you look at the exchanges that may or may not have a lot of watch trading, they're rated very well as well in terms of the actual volume. And I think a lot of that is quite legitimate. So it's really good to appreciate what we do have at this time. But yeah, we are speaking to others as well.
Yeah, the vast majority of exchanges you see out there are almost entirely fake in terms of how much trading is actually happening on those exchanges. I think what really matters to the community is liquidity, and by adding more exchanges, all you do is dilate that liquidity across several different order books. So it actually doesn't help to have a bunch of exchanges. So we need to be very careful and very selective about exchanges that we do try and get listed on. So I hope that answers the question. Someone just posted in the chat, Trade Ogre for the win. I'm on board. Everyone in this office really likes Trade Ogre. We don't know who runs it. We know nothing about them, but we all like it. So
I don't know anything about Trade Ogre. I've communicated with them via email and through their Twitter account, like very rarely. But they've been running Loki for a while.
They listed us without asking on like the first day.
Yeah.
And we were like, oh no,
yeah.
we don't want to be listed yet.
Since we started, they've been running, but no one knows the operator. So yeah, as with any exchange, actually, be very careful about how much you have on the exchange at any one time. Because even KuCoin, for example, like big exchanges have gone offline before, like BitMEX or BTCE as well. Like, so.
I mean, Cryptopia is a pretty good example, right? That went down. We were trading on that. I understand the community got a lot of Loki locked up there, and no one yet knows exactly what's going to happen with that. So yeah.
So yeah, be careful about where you store your coins. Always try and store in the wallet, and then move to the exchange just as you're about to trade, and then take them off. That's my advice.
Okay, we'll move on. We have some marketing questions. Actually, there's a question in here that we already answered a couple of roundtables ago. How did the name Loki? Where did the name Loki come from? It came from Josh's brain on a whiteboard in a brainstorming session in 2017. Next question. Has a marketing plan been created in anticipation of non-beta products? So in other words, when these products are actually ready to go, what's our plan for that, Josh?
Yeah, so it's hard to come up with plans when all our focus is trying to acquire Simon.Loki name service before we get to. But when we're not focusing on that,
sorry, the internet was cutting out for a second there.
Oh, really? Never mind. Is it good now?
I guess so.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so a lot of our focus is actually on the product launches at the end of the year for Messenger and for Lokinet. So what that entails is just a lot of market research at this point. But specifically, we're looking at target audiences for who's going to use these products, but also current existing audiences for the current products that are out there in the market. And now it's good that we've got the new hires on board as well, because we can do a lot of content creation. So with a lot of what we're researching into the target audiences, we can create this content to see, are we targeting the specific audiences we're trying to target? Are we getting the right kind of engagement that we're going for? We're also doing a lot in the way of socials too. So we're engaging with other people in the space. So that way it's good to bring a lot of people who haven't necessarily heard of Loki before into the whole ecosystem. And that also involves do a lot of SEO and SEM kind of optimization, which is people who know about Loki and are interested, trying to help them find, you know, the right sort of aspects that they're particularly interested in about Loki. So at the moment, there's just a lot of research going in, but there are all these little things that we're kind of optimizing and refining for the end of the year when these products, these non-beta products actually launch.
Sweet. I don't know about you guys, but I heard about 80% of that. Your upload speed must be pretty horrible in that little meeting room there, man.
Yeah, I think Chris and Josh are on the same connection or something, which is bottlenecking it, maybe.
Mine? I'm on gigabit, my man.
No, you're not. It looks like trash.
Yeah, both of you have about the same quality.
That's a shame. We always try and get Josh talking more. How have you found? This is a question for me actually. How have you found the new team members so far? They can't hear you right now, but they will watch this later, I imagine. So be very careful about what you say.
Yeah, I really like them so far, all of them. Very smart.
Yeah, you would say that, wouldn't you?
Of course. You're going to be watching this back. They're really good so far. It's great. Like just the extra help from them going in, because a lot of the time it was hard for me to actually plan out and strategize certain things because that would stop me doing, and I would feel, you know, like 50% of the whole marketing team just kind of goes down for that. So now I can actually plan out and strategize what goes ahead next while things are still happening, and that's great. But I really like them. Guy, Alex, and Tim, they're all good eggs. Get them on a roundtable at some time.
Excellent. Okay. We will be wrapping this up very shortly, so do post in the chat. I want to say goodbye to you all, or if you have any last-minute questions, now is the time. Probably there's enough questions here. We'll find one more. Unless any random questions come through right now, which would be convenient. But there's a slight delay in the stream, which is quite annoying. What is the Chinese name of Loki? You can hold an event with Chinese names. I think Chris Pavlesic was looking into this question and has been working a little bit with the Chinese community lately to determine what exactly that might be. Hey, Chris.
I looked into this as well.
Oh, do you know the answer? I was going to call him over here.
Okay, no. I mean, yeah. Well, I looked into it. I don't know what it means, but and I don't speak any Chinese, so I'm just going to preface this. But I looked it up, and I think Loki in Chinese is like Lo Ji. Don't know what it means.
Probably Loki.
Yeah.
That would be more of a transliteration than a translation.
Okay. But yeah, so that's what it is in Chinese, and yeah, currently we put more efforts into the Chinese community at the moment, so which is great because I can see that there's been a bunch of questions that have come through from them. So at the biggest hurdle is always the fact that no one here in the office actually speaks Chinese.
Yeah, we don't have a separate or dedicated plan for the Chinese community. It's not something that we have been willing to invest dedicated resources into, and we don't have strong enough relationships with Chinese-speaking companies to be able to partner with any of them. And I'm not sure it's something that we will do. But of course, the Chinese communities that do exist, we're always interested in helping people find more and learn more about Loki. But our focus will always be on the English-speaking community, just because that is our forte. Much more of the world speaks English and we're able to more clearly communicate exactly what we're doing in that regard in English. So yeah, but hopefully we can see some more progress on that front in months to come. Okay, I was trying to see if, oh, here's a good question. Simon, what have you learned from running Loki over the last year? A lot. I've learned every turn is a new lesson for me. Since we started this, yeah, as you pointed out, Skeleton, we went from 4 people to 23, and that has happened in quite a short space of time. And every couple of months, the strategy changes once again, and it's time to learn something new. So I'm always constantly learning, learning a lot about managing teams and supporting people. I don't do a lot of micromanaging because I don't have to, because we've developed a system to get smart people that can sort of help us work out what needs to happen and then make it happen themselves. So that's been a real blessing, and yeah, there's a lot, and there's a lot of legal stuff as well that I've learned in the last year. I learned a fair bit about technology last year as well. Obviously, trying to figure out what is the cutting edge of encryption and privacy, and how we can best utilize that to ensure that our product suite is actually up to today's standard. So that's been a real journey, and it's been really exciting. I've got one final question. How bilingual or multilingual is the team? Not very. Neil speaks Dutch because he's Dutch. No surprises there. Pretty sure Doyle speaks Vietnamese, although I'm pretty sure he does. Is there anyone else?
Maxim Russian.
Ah, yeah, that makes sense.
Sasha French.
That's true. And
You speak German?
Ja, ich kann etwas Deutsch sprechen. Yeah, we're not very multilingual.
I think we are kind of bilingual. It's just all
Spread out.
Yeah.
Josh speaks Japanese.
Oh, he doesn't.
Tries to. Goes to classes every week.
He'll get there one day. I look forward to that day.
Konnichiwa.
There is actually one final really good question that I think is quite a fun little conversation. Can you talk about the switch from GPU mining to RandomX, or in our case, RandomXL? Key, how's that gone down?
Yeah, so the switch was probably, I don't know the exact dates, but about a month ago or 2 weeks ago, something like that. We've seen it's been good. Like it's kicked a lot of what we think were FPGAs off the network when we're on Kryptonite Turtle. The major downside to it, though, is that there's been a massive Turtle coin miner called Bitmain #1 who has moved over into I think it's the Miner Rocks pool, or might not be the Miner Rocks pool.
It's Mine Together.
Yeah, it's moved to the Mine Together pool and has started to mine Loki. I've had some talks with the Mine Together pool operators, and we know them quite well at this point. So I don't think there's any risk for malicious. Well, there is obviously a risk for malicious activity because they're a pool with over 50% of the hash rate. But I've talked to them, and I don't think there's any imminent threat. When checkpointing enables, that will take away the risk of 51% miner producing a chain that can be double spent upon. But the main thing is, yeah, it is a bit annoying that we have such a large miner. We think that it's a large CPU miner because they were also mining TotalCoin as well. And they moved over. They've been mining TotalCoin for about 3 to 4 months, and now they've moved over to Loki. So, yeah, from the information I have, it's a really big CPU farm somewhere, and it's not actually a botnet. So, it's a bit annoying that we have that on RandomX, but there's not much we can do about it until we fork to checkpointing, which is happening in about a month.
Well, even when we do fork to it, we're not actually going to do anything about it.
Correct. Yeah,
it'll just do anything about it.
Yeah, it'll just prevent the risk of them producing an alternate chain, which reorganizes producing double spend.
I've got a couple little minor things to add to that. So one, it looked a little bit better before we forked if you looked at the distribution over pools, but I actually I got into contact with some pool owners, and it turns out that we basically had 2 miners who were just spreading their hash rate to a bunch of different pools. So it kind of looked good, but when you dug down, it really wasn't good. So like as Keith says, we're not ideal now, but I don't think we're worse now than we were before. The second point is right now we're kind of the only or the biggest RandomX people going. And Monero is forking to this in, I think it's October. And so when that happens, I expect we're going to see a lot more CPUs get pushed into Monero. And it'll be interesting to see what effect it has on us at the same time.
Yeah, cool. All right. We will wrap it up from there. I know the stream has not been as long as they normally are, but we were waiting 35 minutes for it to kick off. So we got work to do. We're busy people. We got products to release and Lokinet to fix and make better and release and then test, which we need your help for. So keep an eye out for that announcement, probably in a couple of weeks' time for the reopening of the beta program. Follow the guides. An hour of your time would go a long way to helping us make Lokinet and Loki Messenger the products that we've all been waiting for. So that would be amazing. So until next time, in the next community roundtable, we wish you well. Of course, if you do have follow-up questions that you need answered, we're always available currently in our Loki Telegram community, also in the Discord. And very soon, we'll also have a Loki community chat in the Messenger. So I look forward to seeing you there. Follow me on Twitter, Simon A. Harman. That's Harman. Someone will link that in the stream chat, I'm pretty sure. I'm really trying to up my Twitter game. I thought I'd just do a subtle personal plug there because I have that power. That's good, eh?
Yeah, but nobody
you
knows how to
mentioned,
spell it because H isn't a letter.
It is in Australia, Tom. We don't care about your Americanisms, all right?
a
There's
big
no
shout out
space for that.
for Berlin Blockchain Week. If anyone else is going to be down there,
Yeah.
Simon and Key will be in the space, so definitely reach out.
Great point. Yeah, we'll be at the Web3 Summit Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday next week. Really looking forward to it. If anyone's going to be there, please, by all means, hit me up. Let's have a chat, even if it's just to say hi. And yeah, until next time.